Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank Senator Cornyn for raising the urgent concern associated with the counterterrorism threat and unlawful entry at the southern border. We should be losing sleep over it. But, Mr. Chairman, that's why it's inexcusable that we were blocked even from debating and amending Senator Lankford's bipartisan proposal. Senator Lee made reference to what a normal legislative body would do under these circumstances. Well, a normal legislative body would proceed to debate of the bill, consider amendments, and then members would have the opportunity to block cloture on passage if the amendments were deemed insufficient. There was an opportunity to offer amendments related to parole. I'd be willing to work with you on them. There was an opportunity to offer amendments to improve the bill, to plug what's been described as loopholes. And if those amendments were insufficient, there was another vote that would have had a 60-vote threshold at which senators could have prevented progress on the bill. Instead, the Senate was not even allowed to get on the bill and debate it and consider amendments. I don't think that anyone in this body is interested right now in lectures on border security from Senate Republicans after we were prevented even from debating the legislation and considering amendments, given the urgency of the national security concerns that Senator Cornyn rightly raised today. I am one of those Democrats that for the last several years has in public criticized members of my own party for dismissing national security concerns associated with the chaos at the southern border. But the parade of excuses that we've heard this morning, trying to rationalize the blocking of even an opportunity to debate and amend legislation drafted by Senator Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, sterling national security and border security credentials, is completely unpersuasive. Everyone knows why we were blocked from debating and amending that bill. Presidential year politics. Everyone knows it. And I wish I respect the confidentiality of my conversations with my colleagues, so I won't make them public. But I do wish that the American public could hear some of the private conversations I had with my Republican friends in the hours before that legislation was stopped in its tracks. In the hours before the most significant prospect for the Senate acting on border security in over a decade was stopped in its tracks. Because in private, many of my colleagues openly acknowledged that it was the former president coming out against this legislation. Fear of primary challenges that motivated their vote. It had nothing to do with the substance of the underlying bill, which, again, members would have had the opportunity to amend had the debate itself not be filibustered. So let's dispense with this whole charade that the issue was substantive. If the issue were substantive, we should have gotten on the bill and considered amendments. And it could have been stopped later in the process if those amendments were deemed insufficient. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Lee.
I'd like a chance to respond. Thank you. Okay. Let's go back to the last time we undertook a major effort to reform our immigration laws. Remember that? It's known as the Gang of Eight moment. In the Judiciary Committee, we spent weeks, literally weeks, I think it was about a month, just in a markup on that bill. Well, not hearings, just in the markup itself. Immigration law is fairly complex, and you tweak one provision, it can have 12 spillover ramifications. So we wanted to be careful about how to do it. We entertained amendments. We voted on dozens and dozens of amendments. It finally passed out of committee. It ultimately got to the Senate floor, and it ended up passing. I didn't vote for that one. I had some deep concerns with it, but it had a process. Now, to be short, the proposal negotiated by three of our colleagues, two Democrats and one Republican, wasn't as big as that one. I don't think it would have needed an entire month of markup. It's something that probably could have been marked up much faster than that, but it certainly, on no planet could you describe it as being so simple that it didn't need a markup at all. And not only did it not need a markup, it didn't even need a hearing before the Committee of Jurisdiction, which is this committee. It never came before this committee at all. Instead, it was airdropped onto the senators Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just between 24 and 48 hours before we're expected to vote on it. So, look, where there is some bipartisan consensus, this is a great way to incubate those. This is the way to incubate those. Take this to the committee where some of these ideas can be vetted and ferreted out. I think some of the problems with that bill could have and would have naturally been clarified, repaired by the time they got to the floor had we done that here.
Thank you, Senator Lieber.
Well, hang on. I will finish. Just give me a couple more minutes. I'm almost finished. As to your point, Senator Ossoff, about cloture, I understand the point. I do. But been around this place long enough to know that that's kind of it's like a teaser rate. And that's a tricky moment. The minute you support cloture on the motion to proceed to a measure, you sort of flip the script. Now, I often vote for cloture on the motion to proceed to a bill that I don't think is perfect and that I couldn't vote for ultimately at that moment. But sometimes I'll vote for it anyway on cloture on the motion to proceed if I think it's sufficiently close to where it reasonably could be amended to the point I could support it. This one didn't match that. And so if you vote on cloture on the motion to proceed at that point, you're not necessarily saying kill this forever, but you're saying it's not quite ready for that. But once you do it, you're onto the bill. It has more momentum. And then it's the job of those with concerns with the measure, it's their job to then win amendment votes to remove the objectionable language. There was so much objectionable language in this. Knowing as we are that Republicans are in the minority, it would have been exceedingly difficult to win those votes. So that was our shot. And that's why it's entirely reasonable to oppose cloture on the motion to proceed to that bill and still have a desire to amend the underlying bill, the supplemental, to insert U.S. border security language into it. That's what we were trying to do. That was not unreasonable. And you may have heard from people about President Trump. Look, nobody's been in more conversations of Republican senators, all of them and every subset imaginable of them. I can tell you, if there are people for whom President Trump and presidential politics was the deciding issue, I don't know who those are. I know many, many multiples of anyone you could identify in this who had made up their minds even before he weighed in, at least based on what little they knew, and who would have made up their minds once we ultimately got the measure, again, just 48 hours before we were to vote on it. Thank you.
4 words. Former President Trump said 4 words. Blame it on me. I saw it on television. I think it's true. I don't think it was a product of AI. Blame it on me. I just have to back up what Senator Ossoff